these next 2 months talks are going to be about probably one of the most absolute important things in all of health. And this is about inflammation. Next month, our webinar is going to be on an anti-inflammatory diet. So it kind of dovetails with this one. This one's more of an information webinar about inflammation, where it comes from, why do you get it, what are the symptoms, signs, all that kind of stuff. But next month, and we are going to give you some things that you can do today, but next month, we're going to go really into detail about an anti-inflammation diet. And so these next 2 months are going to be really, really important as far as what you'll see here in a minute is the #1 health problem in the world. So with 60% of Americans having a chronic disease, people are wasting more and more time in doctors' waiting rooms. Tucson Functional Medicine offers health programs to get to the cause of your health issue. So you can spend less time in waiting rooms and more time enjoying the quality of life that you deserve. Now, this graphic was done by the CDC in 2013, so it may even be worse than that now, but 6 out of 10 Americans have a chronic disease. 4 out of 10 Americans have 2 or more chronic diseases. And this says, nation's $3.3 trillion. It's now $4 trillion. We're spending $4 trillion every single year on healthcare in this country. So this is going to be the truth about inflammation. It's going to be a lot of facts. Now, in the handouts that I sent to you an hour ago, one of the handouts is a note-taking PDF. And each page has 3 of our slides in it, every slide that we have that we're going through. And to the right of it is a bunch of blank lines so you can take notes. So if you want that and you didn't get that, go to the email that I sent you that has a link. You just click it, takes you right over to all the PDFs, and then you can download that one so you can take notes. So who's this workshop for? These are for people who want to feel listened to and deeply cared about. A medical doctor just told this to me the other day, and I did not know this. Insurance will not pay a doctor to spend for an office visit more than 15 minutes. So if you go over 15 minutes, that's just free because the insurance isn't going to pay for anything. Now, the average doctor visit in America is probably about 10 minutes. Some go a little over, some go a little under. But can you really be listened to in 10 minutes? Can you really get to the problems that you're interested in 10 minutes? This is for people who want to successfully recover from their health challenges. Create practical and sustainable health habits. Uncover the root cause or causes, depending upon how many issues you have. Spend less hours researching online. People that are really into their health are spending an enormous amount of time online now looking stuff up. And one of the problems with the internet is if you go to 10 websites about a particular topic, you'll probably find 10 different ideas because nobody agrees on anything anywhere about anything. But when it comes to your health, you need to have somebody that works with you, and takes as much time with you as you need to get to the underlying cause of the problem. And one of functional medicine's goals is to teach the patient to need the doctor less. One of the other things, and we'll get to it, but one of the other things about a functional medicine doctor is they don't want you on pills for the rest of your life. Lifestyle should replace pills. So by the end, you're going to discover, you're going to have an understanding of inflammation, different ways to help control inflammation. The biggest way, or one of the biggest ways, is diet. And that's why we've dedicated an entire webinar to this in May. I don't remember the actual date it is, but whenever it is in May. Why this is going to help you understand a little bit about why the conventional approach isn't enough, and a proven strategy for long-term health. There is no magic formula to health. Health is actually much more simple than we've made it out to be. Health is about lifestyle. Health is about making the proper choices to support the health of your body and don't tear down your body. That's really all health is. So let's get started. So what is inflammation, right? So let's go back here a second. We are Tucson Functional Medicine. I am Dr. T. Dr. Trent Freeman is my actual name. somebody called me Mr. T decades ago, and it stuck. And so now I'm always known as Mr. T or Dr. T. I have a doctorate in chiropractic medicine. I also have a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. Excuse me. And I also have a certification in functional medicine. There's only 2 certified doctors in Tucson. There's a lot of people that'll tell you they're practicing functional medicine, but they really don't. They just tell you they practice it. Functional medicine is a completely new way of looking at the body. But I am a naturopath, and I also am a functional medicine provider, and so I think I can speak to this. Most naturopaths have no real desire to get you off of pills. They just want you to believe that the pills that you're taking, since they're natural and over the counter, that they're perfectly okay to take for the rest of your life. And functional medicine completely disagrees with that. We do use a lot of pills to force organ systems back to doing what they're supposed to. But once we get the lifestyle under control, the pills should be able to go away, and our healthy lifestyle should enable our organ systems to do what they're supposed to do without the need of being propped up by pills. So most functional medicine doctors want to get you off of pills. Not right away, because we need pills to help things, symptoms and structures and whatever's not working. But we take the pills while we're working on lifestyle so that you don't need to take the pills. Lifestyle, we didn't even have supplements or pharmaceuticals before the 1900s. And so how did people survive for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years? Lifestyle was the key. All right, so let's talk about what inflammation is. Inflammation, the number one thing, it's a biological response triggered by the immune system. Now, a lot of big words in there, but as we go through this, I think this will make sense to you. Number 2, when irritants and pathogens are damaging cells in your body, the immune system signals the inflammatory response to go and deal with the pathogens or the whatever's causing the problem. The immune system keys the system to get into action. Infections, wounds, and any damage to tissues would not be able to heal without the inflammatory response. 80% of our immune system is in the digestive tract. This is why diet plays such a key part in so many health conditions. Inflammation isn't necessarily bad. It's good, it's bad, and it's ugly. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's talk about this. What's the good about inflammation? Acute inflammation is actually very supportive to the health of the human body. So the good is inflammation is the body's first line of defense against any kind of harm. When it becomes bad is when it becomes chronic. And so when inflammation is there, if the body deals with it and it's over, that's a positive. But when we have inflammation for months, years, stuff like this, then it becomes chronic inflammation. And this is when it becomes bad and on into ugly. And so the ugly, chronic inflammation causes diseases and negative conditions to the body. So something could be good, could be bad, and could actually be very harmful to the body just because of the length of time that we have it. So what causes chronic inflammation? Basically, when the body fails at being to eliminate acute inflammation, then what happens is that acute inflammation stays longer and eventually it becomes chronic because it's been there for a long period of time. So when the body fails to eliminate the causes of acute inflammation, such as infectious organisms, funguses, other parasites, when these things stay and the body cannot eliminate them, then it can become chronic. Exposure to low levels of particular inhalants, so things we breathe from the air, or foreign material, including substances, industrial chemicals, any of those that cannot be eliminated, the body must continually respond to them because we weren't able to get them out of the body. An autoimmune disorder in which the immune system attacks healthy tissue. So autoimmunity is where the body is attacking itself. And we do a lot of work with autoimmunity. Now, this is how I actually got into functional medicine to start with. Is my wife has Hashimoto's. So that's an autoimmune disease attacking the thyroid. And I kept taking her to doctors, and I just was getting so frustrated because this doctor did the same thing that the doctor did 6 months ago that didn't work. And wasn't it Einstein that said the definition of insanity is to do the same action over and over and over again, but expect a different result? And so I got online and I started looking, probably in the early to mid 2000s, and functional medicine became really formal in the year 2000. So it hasn't really been around that long when you look at, you know, how long medicine has been around. Because my frustration for my wife's health with her thyroid, I stumbled on functional medicine. And functional medicine really returned the joy of healthcare to me. Medicine should be about the patient, not the disease. And what we have now in America, and there's always going to be good doctors of any kind, so this isn't ever universal. But before the late 1930s, doctors, we didn't have all these tests, you know, we didn't have ultrasounds and all this kind of stuff. And even if like x-rays, I think they were created like in the 1850s, but they were never really used in medicine. They just weren't used that much. So prescriptions really became mainstream in the late 30s. So before the late 30s, doctors had to study the human body. And the actual best doctors out there to do this were the osteopaths. So you go to Amazon, there's all kinds of books on Amazon. Most of them were written by osteopaths about signals that the body sends when they have problems inside. One of the ones that almost everybody knows is skin tags. So those extra little growths of skin, they're usually on the base of the neck or in the armpit area. And 80% of those people have diabetes. So the body is constantly sending signals about what's going on inside. We just have to understand the signals and be able to interpret them. But then we came up with all these tests, and I'm not against the tests. I love the tests, but doctors no longer treat the patient. Doctors treat the test results. What our little tagline, I think it is patient-centered care, not disease-centered care. I had a guy come into my office, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he says, you know, I'm a diabetic. And I just hate to hear that. He's not a diabetic. He's a human being that might have diabetes, but because of the way diseases are presented by our healthcare systems in America, people identify as their diseases now. And functional medicine isn't about that. Functional medicine is about the patient. Okay, so let me go back to the fourth one over here, and then we're going to talk about this. So the fourth one is biochemical inducers leading to excess oxidative stress. Now, the reason human beings die, unless they get run over by a truck, is because of oxidation. So you know how you cut an apple in half, you set it on the counter, and it turns brown and shrivels up. The same exact thing is going on in your cells. So if we have oxidation that are caused by free radicals, and we'll show you this here in a sec. Free radicals is what causes oxidation. So let's talk real quick about the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is nothing more than the little energy plant for the cell. So I live in Tucson. I don't know where you guys are living, but I live in Tucson. And in Tucson, we have TEP, Tucson Electric and Power. And that's our power. That's our energy producer, our power company for the city of Tucson. I grew up in Sierra Vista, about 90 miles from here, but they don't pay TEP there. They have a health company, or a health company. They have an electric company called Sulphur Springs Co-op. And if you don't live in Tucson, you don't pay TEP. Well, every cell in your body has its own little energy plant, and it's called the mitochondria. And this is a picture of the mitochondria. This is a healthy mitochondria. Now, let me set the stage with this. You're driving down the freeway, And in the right-hand lane is a car that is old. It's not running well. You can hear the engine, and it's running really, really hard. And black smoke is just coming out the back of the car. So cars are wonderful tools, but they have negative things. One of those negative things is called exhaust. Well, you have exhaust in the mitochondria. Now, this is a healthy mitochondria over here. Okay. The green is energy, and in the body, energy is called ATP. But we create a little bit of free radicals. And free radicals is what causes oxidation. Now, if we have damage, and we'll find out here in just a minute, inflammation is one of the biggest damagers of the mitochondria. Now it becomes that car that's puking black smoke. So here we have a little bit of energy, but we have a lot of the exhaust, or in this case, free radicals. So when everything's working well, we still put out a little bit of negative, just like our cars still put out exhaust. And we as people have created all these systems to eliminate the exhaust. So we have catalytic converters, we have all this kind of, we burn unleaded gas now, and all that kind of stuff is so that we have less exhaust. And then for the mitochondria, we call that free radicals. But if the system isn't operating optimally, we have a lot of exhaust and just a little bit of energy. So this over here is that car in the right-hand lane that is, the engine's running 100 miles an hour and it's doing 40 miles an hour down the freeway, and it's puking black smoke out like crazy. That is an example of a mitochondria that is producing tons of free radicals. So one of the problems with inflammation is free radicals cause inflammation, and inflammation causes free radicals. So it's the chicken or the egg. So natural doctors have been talking about stress and inflammation for decades. And the traditional medical model completely poo-pooed the whole thing. That was just crazy. The World Health Organization ranks chronic disease as the greatest threat to the human species. Now this is, a patient actually brought this to me. That's why I covered up their name here. But a patient brought this to me, and I use it all the time. It's the greatest gift I ever got for my business here. This is the November of 2019, November, and her head's covering up most of the 9, but it's 2019. And oh my gosh, we now know the secret to good health and long life. Oh my goodness. And here's what it said on the inside of that bulletin, of that little magazine. And I blew this part up so you could see this. The cure for everything. Researchers have linked inflammation to nearly every critical disease of aging. So if you reduce it now, you can clear a path to a happier, healthier, longer life. This was put out in the ARRP Bulletin in November of 2019. So now even the medical profession is getting on the bandwagon where inflammation, chronic disease, is the biggest threat to Americans. When modern medicine formed in the early what we call modern medicine formed in the early 1900s, everybody was dying of infection. So tuberculosis, they were all dying of infection. So our medical system grew up in a time where the biggest health concern was infections. And our medical system is great at this. They do really, really well at emergency room type stuff. So their job is to keep you alive. The outcome of a medical treatment is survival, not health, survival. Now, I'm not against that. And I think that the medical profession does that so well, we should keep them and they should keep doing this. But our traditional medical system has set themselves up as being the health care doctors. And our current medical system has very little to do with health. It has everything to do with survival. But here's what I always tell everybody. We need that part. If you don't survive, my functional medicine doesn't make any difference at all. But if the medical profession is able to keep you alive, which is a good thing, but now you want health and a quality of life, you need to go to doctors who've actually studied health and quality of life. And the traditional medical system studies disease. I'm not against that, but that's not health. So I just read this article, I think it was in the New England Journal of Medicine, and it said that 50% of medical doctors are obese. How in the world could I talk to you about diet if I'm fat? That would be so hypocritical. In fact, I had one of my patients one time a few years ago, and here's what she said, and I thought it was really funny. The doctor came in to see her, and then the doctor left the chart in the room and left the room. Now that is like the ultimate no-no, because what is the first thing you think that patient did when the doctor was gone? She opened up the chart, and in it said a 52-year-old obese female, and she was so offended. And you know what the first thing is that she said to me? Well, you should have seen him, right? That's why you never leave a chart in a room, because a patient will go through it. And if you actually state things in the chart that would be offensive, then they're going to get all mad at you. So even the ARRP Bulletin is now talking about what natural doctors have been talking about for close to 100 years. So what are the symptoms? Now, this is not completely inclusive by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of people don't know that they have problems with inflammation. But this little list of stuff that I give you might key you off to see if you maybe are having a problem with inflammation. Body pain, constant fatigue and insomnia, depression, anxiety, mood disorders, GI complaints like constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, IBS, you know, all the GI stuff, weight gain, frequent infections. Now, there's many more than this, but these are the big, however many there were, these are the big list of the things that you can kind of examine your life, and you can say, you know, do I suffer from any of these? Maybe I should have inflammation looked at, because the things that we've been doing haven't been resolving the problems. So what conditions are related to chronic inflammation? Well, you can see right there, one of them is asthma, right? My doctoral thesis for my naturopathic degree, I proved that asthma didn't even exist. Because what we actually did was we took 5,000 asthma patients that were on inhalers and nebulizers, and all we did was change their diet. We put them on anti-inflammatory foods, and every one, all 5,000 of their symptoms of asthma went away. But what conditions? Well, asthma, cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, obesity, rheumatoid arthritis, sinusitis, type 2 diabetes, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. The list goes on and on and on, right? My wife has Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune, and one of the biggest factors of it is inflammation. Inflammation is undermining our entire health structure nowadays. So what are the risk factors that make you more susceptible to chronic inflammation? So this is a list of things that if you have any of these things in your life, this actually might show again that you are at a greater risk for chronic inflammation. So the first one is age, how old you are. The second is obesity. The third one is your diet. The fourth one is smoking. The fifth is low sex hormones. The fifth one, sleep and stress disorders. You know, can you think about what all these things have in common? Well, inflammation for sure, but these are lifestyle things. Every one, well, all but one is a lifestyle thing. So here's the good news about that list I just did. There's only one of those in that list that you cannot control. Your age. You are where you are. But you can control obesity, diet, smoking, your sex hormones, stress, sleep disorder. You can control all those. That's the great thing about most health problems that we can have in the body. We in America talk a good game, but we're not very good at follow through. So the #1 New Year's resolution every single year is I'm going to lose weight and get in shape. And 95% of those New Year's resolutions have been abandoned by January 12th to January 17th. They don't even last the whole month of January. So all Americans want health. They want low inflammation. They don't want chronic diseases. But the question comes down to, are you willing to do what's required to do that? If being healthy was easy, everybody would be healthy. You know, I never understood the fact, you know, if I go to the gym and work out, if I could work out once and be in shape, we'd all do that. We'd all go to the gym and work out once, and then we'd be in shape for the rest of our life. But what's up with this? They want you to go every day. They want you to do exercise all the time. And you just got to keep doing it. And that's the problem for most things in lifestyle. Lifestyle isn't having a good diet for a week. Lifestyle is having a good diet for the rest of your life. Exercise is not something that we do for a week. It's something we do for the rest of our life. And that's the problem with being healthy, is it takes effort. There are two things that are required to truly be healthy. The first is personal responsibility. You have to accept responsibility for your health. Now, I say this a lot and nobody likes to hear this, but it is true. We have exactly the health that we have earned. So if we're healthy, keep doing what you're doing. If you're unhealthy, you must re-examine what you've been doing and change your lifestyle so that you can be healthy. But you have to have personal responsibility. That is the most important thing about anything in life, is personal responsibility. But Americans are good at making commitments. Americans are not good at being consistent with behavioral changes. Smoking is one of the absolute worst things that you can ever do for the entire inflammation system in your body. Smoking is a significant contributor to inflammation and is a lifestyle factor that is controllable. So like I said, every one of those things that make you more susceptible to inflammation is controllable except age. Cigarette smoking is associated with lowering the production of anti-inflammatory molecules. So when you smoke, you are doing away with anti-inflammatory system. So if we do away with the system that opposes inflammation, what happens with inflammation? It gets bigger. Now, is quitting smoking easy? No way, right? They say stopping smoking is as hard as stopping heroin. I heard this doctor was given I think it was one of those TED Talks or something years ago. And she actually said that. I thought, wow, smoking is that addictive? Well, it's not only physically addictive with the nicotine, but it's also emotionally addictive. So we can cause a large amount of inflammation through our diet. Now, in the PDFs that I sent to you, I sent you 2 PDFs. One is the top 10 inflammatory foods, and the other is the top 10 non-inflammatory foods. So it's only 10. There's many, many more, but we gave you the top 10. Now, we're not going to go into huge detail on this particular slide because our next webinar is 1 entire hour on nothing but the inflammation or anti-inflammation diet. That's what we're going to talk about next month. But I did want to give you something. So in there are those 2 PDFs. You should download them, take a look, and see how many of the inflammatory foods are in your diet, because you can just start by eliminating any of those top 10 inflammatory foods that are in your diet currently, and that will go a long ways of reducing inflammation currently, and you will see positive symptom help through doing that. So that's why we put that in there. So, okay, so next month, it's entirely on the anti-inflammation diet, but I did give you that today. There are two types of people in this world. There's the DIY people, the people that want to do it themselves, and then there's the people that want someone else to do all the work for them, and they just want to be able to follow the rules. So the Mediterranean diet is probably the most anti-inflammatory diet out there. So if you want most of the work done for you by other people, there's hundreds of cookbooks about the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is the only diet that is being endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Stroke Association. So this would do a lot of the work for you, so you didn't have to do the research to figure out, what foods am I eating that are inflammatory. You could just get on the Mediterranean diet, and that would go a long way in that, and you don't have to do all the legwork. So in your PDF handouts, I put a summary of the Mediterranean diet that we use when we start talking about diet to people in our functional medicine programs. That's one of the handouts we give them. We give them a handout on the ketogenic, we give them a handout on the paleo, the Mediterranean, the keto, lots of different diets. And so, but the Mediterranean diet is probably a really good diet to get started. Next month, when we talk about the anti-inflammatory, if you start working on the Mediterranean diet now, when we go into more detail about it next month, then you can modify the Mediterranean diet a little bit to make it even more anti-inflammatory than it currently is. So again, this picture is really interesting. I thought this was really, they did a study or a survey about, I think it was about 10 years ago, and they asked Americans what their favorite fruit and vegetable was. And you're not going to believe what the average American answered: French fries and ketchup. So the average American thinks that deep fried potato pieces dipped in a gluten-free gluten-containing substance called ketchup, and there's also probably gluten in the batter that they put on the French fries before they deep fry them. This is what the general public in America is viewing as the number one fruit and vegetable in the American diet. I teach nutrition, and the average American is eating 17 to 19 animal products a day and less than 2 plant products a day. I hope that you guys are not fitting into the norm. The average American family who has children at home is eating an average of 9 meals a week at a fast food joint. So are the parents concerned about their kids' health with that? Well, of course not. What they're doing is convenience, because it's easy when you're on the route to drop your kids off at the soccer field or ballet class or whatever. It's really easy just to zip in, pick up some food, and head down the road. And so fast food is a major contributor to inflammation. Any deep fried food, any processed foods, any stuff like that will create inflammation. Like I said, we're going to go into that huge detail next month. We're going to talk about exercise a little bit here, but we're really going to talk about something called the telomeres. So exercise is another essential step in reducing inflammation. So there is a formula. I don't think I put, yeah, I did. I put it right here. So here is the formula for exercise. It's 180 minus your age. That gives you a number. And then you take that number and you add and subtract 5 from that number, and that is your aerobic range. So I'll give you an example. So let's assume a person's 40 years old. 180 minus 40 equals 140. You take 140, you add 5 to 140, and you get 145. You subtract 5 from 140, and you get 135. So the aerobic range for somebody who is 40 years old is 135 to 145. That's exercise. I don't care what you do. What I care about is where your heart rate is. So can walking be exercise? Yep. If you can walk fast enough to get your pulse into your aerobic range. Bike riding, rowing, running, I mean, whatever, treadmills, stair climbers, elliptical, all these things are exercise, and you pick one that you like, if you can pick an exercise that you like. Okay. So it doesn't matter what type of exercise you do. What matters is your heart rate. So I tell everybody, pick an exercise that you like, if that is even possible, right? I exercise every day. Do I love exercise? No. You know what I love? Health. And one of the lifestyle things that will generate health in my life is exercise. So I exercise 6 days a week, every week. Well, I'm sure there's a week every once in a while where I don't get 6, but the general rule, what you want to do, what is defined as exercise by the scientific community, not the government, is 6 days a week, 60 minutes a day. That's the scientific thing. If you want your heart to be more efficient and you want to live longer, you need to work out 6 days a week, 60 minutes a day. Your heart rate needs to be in whatever your aerobic range is. So you take this formula, plug in your age, that'll come out with your aerobic range. Pick an exercise. I couldn't care less what it is. What I care about is you're consistent with it, and I care about that your heart rate is within that range. So how much should you exercise? 6 days a week, 60 minutes each time. Now, initially, if you're not exercising at all, or you're exercising by what the federal government tells you 3 days a week, 20 minutes a day, which is a complete lie, this looks, you think, oh my gosh, this is impossible. There's no way I can do this. So everybody knows this statement. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So we don't start working out 6 days a week, 60 minutes a day. Maybe we start at 5 minutes a day, 6 days a week. And then maybe next week we go to 6 minutes or 10 minutes or 7, but we increase it. So over time, I'd rather you work out 5 minutes a day, 6 days a week than 2 days a week in an hour, because you're actually you're creating a habit when you do something 6 days a week consistently. And once we get the habit done, which is the how many times a week, we can always increase the time. So we should do it slowly. So you do it at your pace. Health is not an instant result thing. Health is a lifetime. So you just want to start low. Maybe you start at a minute. I don't care where you start. I want it to be 6 days a week. I want it to be in your aerobic threshold. That was that formula we showed you. And over time, I want you to increase that to 10 minutes and then 15 minutes and then 20 minutes. And it may take you a year to get up to 60 minutes. That's fine. This isn't a race. This is about health. This is about living to be 120. According to the National Institutes of Health, the CDC, the human body is built to last to be 120 years old. And the average age of death in this country is 78. And that's not the problem. The problem is Americans have accepted that, and they now view dying at 78 as acceptable. You're dying almost 45 years earlier than you should be, but it's become so prevalent that we consider that normal. So let me give you an example. You know, my grandfather died last night. I tell somebody and they go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I say, thank you. They say, well, how old was he? He was 84. Oh my gosh, 84. He lived a good long life. According to the National Institutes of Health and the CDC, human beings should live to be 120. And it is our lifestyle, one of the big things is inflammation, that is causing us to die almost 45 years younger than we're supposed to be. Think about that. So too much stress. So stress signals the body to produce a hormonal response. Oh, you know what I forgot to tell you about? Telomeres. Telomeres are the end caps on our chromosomes. Now, I don't know if you ever heard of telomeres, but let me help you to understand it. Everybody has tennis shoes. And on the end of your shoelace is that little plastic cap. And if you lose that cap, your shoestrings become harder and harder and harder to string your shoe. A telomere is like that little plastic cap on the end of your shoestring, and it's on the end of your chromosomes. So as we age, those telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter. Here is an amazing thing. Exercise increases the length of those telomeres. So even though you're getting older, if you exercise, those telomeres get longer than what they are currently. And that is all part of the living to 120. That's all part of the equation. So exercise is not only important to the way you feel today, it is also increasing those telomeres. You should look that up if you're interested, because it is an amazing thing that can actually go on from exercise. So too much stress. Stress signals the body to produce a hormonal response known as the fight or flight response. So in your autonomic nervous system, and this is the system that manages your body functions automatically. You don't have to think about causing your heart to beat. You don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think about blinking. You have two nervous systems in the autonomic, and you cannot force yourself into one or the other without lifestyle changes. So if you're stressed, we go into the fight or flight. It's called the sympathetic nervous response. The parasympathetic nervous response, we call it the resting and digesting nervous system. So here's what's interesting about stress. When you are stressed, and stress has become so normal in America that people don't even think they're stressed anymore because we've just learned to adapt to it. But it is killing Americans all the time because stress causes inflammation, inflammation causes stress. This is almost like the chicken or the egg. Which came first? So does stress cause inflammation or does inflammation cause stress? Yep. So when you're in the fight or flight, your body prioritizes running away from the saber-toothed tiger above normal body functions. The average American is stressed from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. I read this article. I was doing this whole presentation on sleep, and I was stunned with these numbers. 50% of Americans check their email in the middle of the night. 84% of Americans check their email before they get out of bed in the morning when they wake up. So when we're in the fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system, the body shuts down a lot of normal functioning systems. It shuts down your brain chemicals. It shuts down your sex hormones. It shuts down the thyroid. We stop the conversion of T4 into T3 when we're stressed in the fight or flight. It shuts down our digestive system, and it shuts down our detoxification system. So let me tell you, maybe I can save you some money here. If being stressed in fight or flight shuts down the digestive system, you going and spending all kinds of extra money on organic food and probiotics and prebiotics and all that kind of stuff, and you've never have a systematic approach to inflammation and stress, you're just dumping money down the toilet. Because if we're shutting down the digestive system, you can have the most perfect diet in the world and it's not going to work right. Why? Because we're stressed, and the body prioritizes running away from the saber-toothed tiger more than it prioritizes digestion. Again, it's just like the medical profession. Their outcome is survival. Well, that's what the fight or flight's outcome is, survival. And so the body prioritizes survival above the normal function, because if you get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, digestion doesn't matter, sex hormones don't matter, your thyroid, none of that stuff matters. Here's our problem. As far as I know, there are no saber-toothed tigers in the world anymore. And what we have done is repackage the saber-toothed tiger. And it's now called husbands and wives and kids and parents and jobs and politics and the coronavirus and deadlines and bullying and anxiety and taxes and business, and it just goes on and on and on. So the problem nowadays is we're not responding to a life or death threat like the saber-toothed tiger that was going to eat me. We are now stressed out of our mind about more esoteric things. I heard this one time: fear is dying a death 1,000 times. And every one of these is raising our inflammation, raising our stress, causing us to go into the fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system, because I'm freaking out about, can I pay my mortgage? You know, am I being harassed? Whatever. And this is the thing. And so what we have to do is we have to actually have a system, and we're going to talk about this here in just a minute, to deal with stress, inflammation. So how can we manage stress, right? And this is what we're going to talk about. So there is 3 ways that we can deal with stress. One is called conscious stress control. One is called unconscious or other than conscious stress control. And one is called our contingency plan. So conscious stress control is alpha brainwaves. So you'll see we are mentally and physically relaxed, but we're awake. So I have people all the time, what's my stress control? I go hiking in the mountains. That's great, but can you be unconscious and hike? You cannot. If you're unconscious, you're going to walk into a cactus, you're going to fall off a mountain, because you still have to be in your conscious brain waves to actually do conscious activities, hiking. So alpha brain waves are things that you can do. Some people, they knit, and that is a conscious relaxation thing. Some people hike. Some people, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can do. Put together puzzles for some people. So one way is, and I tell people, one of the best things you can do is get outside. Go take a walk outside. People don't go outside much anymore, especially the kids. They're just plopped behind a computer screen or a TV screen or iPad, phone, whatever. Unconscious brain, unconscious stress control is theta brainwaves. So look at this. It's reduced consciousness. It's deep meditation. Okay. So we need at least once a day, you need to be doing something with the conscious brain in the alpha brainwaves that is relaxing. You also need to be doing some unconscious stress control. And that would be your theta brainwaves. And in our program, we actually teach you exactly how we can guarantee we're in 4 to 8 and all that kind of stuff. And it was way too complicated for what we got here today. So then can we control all stress? No. So then we have to have a contingency plan. So the contingency plan is called box breathing. And you breathe in through the nose for a count of 4. You hold it for a count of 4. You breathe out through the mouth for a count of 4. And then you hold that for a count of 4. And here's how we count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hold it for that same count. Then you exhale to that same count. And what this is actually doing is when we're stressed and we have a lot of inflammation in our life, our breathing gets shallower and it gets higher in our chest. And so if you notice that you're stressed, I mean, hopefully through conscious and unconscious relaxation, controlling our stress and inflammation, we will need our box breathing less and less and less, but we still need something to do when you notice you're in stress. So when you're in stress, if you completely change the physiology of stress, I breathe shorter, I breathe shallower, I breathe high in my chest. If I breathe deep, slow my breaths down, that is actually doing exactly the thing that we need to do when we're in the middle of stress. So we have 3 ways to deal with stress. One is the alpha brainwaves, conscious stress control, theta brainwaves, unconscious stress control, box breathing. Not very good at drawing, am I? Okay. Sleep. Sleep matters huge. So when should you be asleep? No exceptions to the rule. From 10 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning. Your body actually heals itself in that period of time. We have a problem now that we didn't have even 40 years ago, and that's called blue light, electronics. All blue light messes up our sleep pattern. So what blue light actually does is stops the conversion of serotonin into melatonin. The research has now showed that if you stop all electronics, no phones, no tablets, no TVs, no digital clock next to my bed, which is shining the time so I can see it at night, which is blue light. Even if its colors is red, it's still in the blue light spectrum. A minimum of 2 hours before you go to sleep, you should stop all electronics. Now, this is something that we learned about 30 years ago. Every hour of sleep before midnight counts to the body as 2 hours of sleep after midnight. So there are things in the world called blue zones, and these are where people live the longest. So there's only one in America, and it's in Loma Linda. And the whole town is almost all Seventh-day Adventists. And why? Part of the religion of Seventh-day Adventists is they're big in diet, they're big in a lot of health things as part of their religion. So they, as a general rule, have a tendency to live longer. So what they discovered was most people that live the longest, they go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and they get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, Harvard did a study, I think it was like 30 years ago or something, and they said that if you go to bed at 8 and get up at 2, you can increase your life expectancy by 10 years. The same study said that if you eat no animal products, you'll live an average of 20 years longer than a person who eats animal products. I just gave you 30 extra years of life. The question is, will you do it? So hormone levels. Hormone levels that are screwed up also create inflammation in humans. And we actually have a test called the adrenal stress index test, which most sex hormones are made from a product called DHEA. And in that adrenal test, we actually can see your level of DHEA. So we see, are you having problems with your hormones? And almost always it's because of stress, and stress blocks the creation of DHEA. That's a test we run. In your PDF handouts, I put all the references that we use to build this webinar. So if you would like, now what we do is we do all this research and then we try to condense it down into a 1-minute bite-sized thing that you can take home with you. But if you're interested in digging deeper into any of this, I created a PDF with all these hyperlinks in there. So you can just click on it. It'll take you right to whatever the source was that we used to create this webinar. So it's in your PDF. So thanks for joining us today, but here's the name of the game. Even the medical profession is now agreeing that inflammation is undermining all humans' health. It's no longer even a question. Everybody accepts this now. So if we want to live longer, live better, with a better quality of life, we need to reduce inflammation. So we've created an entire program in here about lifestyle. Lifestyle is either moving you towards health or it's moving you away from health. There is no status quo. So the reason the healthy get healthier and the sick get sicker a lot of times is because the life choices that everybody makes each and every day. So if the average family that has children at home is eating 9 meals a week at a fast food joint, we could change that tomorrow. So remember, the only thing in lifestyle that is not controllable to actually be able to help with inflammation is your age. You can't change your age.